Am I the asshole for making a nice big meal spread for myself but not my husband?
So I'm very big into cooking and trying new cuisines.
My husband on the other hand is not. I especially love a lot of Korean food, so I decided I'd make a Korean meal spread with a wide variety of banchan.
Now, my husband has at the very least said he likes kimchi before. And he also liked the bulgogi I made before. So I figured he could at least eat some of it if he was hungry and didn't want to find his own food.
He didn't seem to see it the same way, though. He saw my big spread of dishes and said, "Ew, that looks gross." I told him he should at least try some of it because I think he'd like several of the things I made.
He absolutely did not want to and asked what he was going to have for lunch, so I said, well, you can choose some of the dishes I made, or I am not sure, you'll have to figure out something.
Maybe you can make some chicken to put over the rice. He said the rice looked weird and he didn't want that rice, it was purple rice.
So I just told him, I don't know, you'll have to find something.
Of course he got mad because I put a ton of time and effort into making this big meal spread but wouldn't make him anything he likes to eat.
But I didn't want to have to cook more after making all this. I just wanted to sit down and enjoy my food. When I showed my mother the spread, she said, "Looks nice, but will your husband eat that?"
I told her no, he wouldn't try any, and was mad I wouldn't make him something else. She actually agreed though that it was wrong of me to make all that and nothing specifically for him since I knew he's not very adventurous and wouldn't want anything from it.
So now I'm wondering, am I the asshole?
A lot of the dishes weren't too out there. I really think he'd like them if he just tried one. Not the asshole. Your husband wants to be a picky eater. He can make his own food.
You didn't tell him he can't eat what you made. He is making that choice.
I'm guessing you've made many meals catering to his preferences. Not the asshole, if he eats bulgogi and kimchi. But YTA for not providing a list of banchan. And at least one recipe.
I, of course, have no ulterior motive here.
Not the asshole.
He knew what you were making, said he didn't want it. He didn't ask you to make something else for him, so it's up to him and his loss.
Sure. You could have offered to make him something else, but you're not obligated to make food for anyone other than your kids if you're a parent. Info. Is your husband incapacitated to some degree where he is physically unable to make any meals on his own? Not the asshole.
You went to a lot of trouble to cook a feast, taking care to make sure that there was something that might appeal to your husband.
It's not your fault he's a picky eater. I'm a very picky eater, myself.
He owes you an apology for being so rude.
Not the asshole. My children learned growing up we were not a short-order cooks.
They could eat what their father or I prepared for dinner, or they could have a bowl of cereal or make a sandwich.
We weren't making multiple meals. He saw my big spread of dishes and said, "Ew, that looks gross." I told him he should at least try some of it because I think he'd like several of the things I made.
He absolutely did not want to and asked what he was going to have for lunch, so I said, well, you can choose some of the dishes I made, or I am not sure, you'll have to figure out something.
Ew, and that looks gross is something my children used to say.
Now they laugh about it.
Am I the asshole for being ungrateful for my Nintendo Switch?
This happened a while back, but my younger sister, we'll call her Minnie, brought it up the other day, and I have no idea if I acted like an asshole or not. Basically, my dad promised me a Nintendo Switch if I did well on my exams. Prior to this, myself and my 3 sisters shared one console.
I was really excited to hear this as the Switch we were currently using also had a massive splotch in the middle of the screen. Long story, my youngest sister fell asleep on it. The reason why my dad offered one is because I had been saving up for one because of the splotch in the middle of the screen, so he just gave me a better incentive to do well on my exams. Well, result time rolls around and I get straight A's.
Here's where I could be the asshole though. Minnie's birthday was a week after results day that year, so instead of buying Emmy a new Switch, my dad bought Minnie a new Switch for her birthday, that she didn't even want, and gave me the old one for myself, even though I'd probably have to continue sharing it with my other 2 sisters.
I was really upset about this, and I told him I'd rather just buy a new one myself and that I didn't want the old one. I thought it was really unfair, but he maintained that I was an ungrateful asshole and that I was not allowed to buy myself a new one. Either use the broken Switch or get nothing. Minnie was upset about this too, as she didn't mind using the old Switch but had to take the new one as it was her birthday present. So was I the asshole for being ungrateful? Edit. This didn't happen recently. I had just turned 17 when this happened, got my first job and sat the aforementioned exams at 16.
I'm only asking about it now because it keeps being brought up and my dad still insists I acted out of order.
Not the asshole.
Being ungrateful in this situation would have been you throwing a fit about the color or something, had he kept his promise and actually got you a new Switch. That's not what happened here.
I hate when parents weaponize certain words to berate their children for being disappointed in their inability to uphold promises they made. He promised you a Switch.
He did not promise to give you the old one, once he bought your sister a new one.
He did that on purpose, and denying you the chance to purchase the Switch on your own is proof. Not the asshole. He said he would get you a Switch, not give you the broken one for yourself. Especially since he knew you were saving to buy one of your own. Your dad's the real piece of work in this situation. Not the asshole, but can you provide more info on whether this kind of treatment is new or a common occurrence? Does he often favor your sister at your expense? Does he often break his word to you? Not the asshole, you father was being cheap. My mom wanted a dog. She got one for my brother for his birthday. His birthday. Not hers. No, not the asshole. He said he'd get you a Switch, not one you already owned and had to share. That's ridiculous. Not the asshole. He didn't hold up his end of the deal. In addition to this, he gave you the broken one that you were saving up to replace while giving the new one to the person who broke it. Then he banned you from replacing the one you were always intending to replace. I really can't imagine what he was thinking, or how he would justify it in a situation where, what I say goes, doesn't apply. Am I the asshole? I made my boyfriend and his family leave his sister's wedding. So for information before I start, I have undiagnosed pain in my back and legs that my doctors are looking into currently. Me and my boyfriend have been together for around 7 months now, and his sister kindly invited me to her wedding. My boyfriend told me he'd really enjoy having me there, so I agreed. The week before, my BFF's dad broke his foot and couldn't drive him and BFF's mom to the wedding, so my boyfriend agreed to take them. It was agreed we'd leave the wedding around 9:10 p.m. This was perfect for me as I had to be home to pick up my daughter the next morning at around 10 a.m. The day comes and I drop off my daughter and get ready. We pick up his parents and go to the wedding. It was lovely, although around 6 p.m. I started getting really bad pain in my legs and back. I just put on my comfortable shoes and tried to sit down for everything I could. At around 10 p.m. I mentioned the pain to my boyfriend, asking when we'll be heading off. He asked his mom and she said, 30 minutes more. So I thought, fine, it is her daughter's wedding. Half an hour came and went, so I asked again and he said he'd ask. At this point I'm feeling like I'm going to cry, so I excuse myself and lay on the sofa in the lobby crying a little. I didn't want to make a scene, so when anybody asked I just said I was a little tired. It was now 11:30 p.m. and my boyfriend come to check on me and said his mom just wanted half an hour more. His mom then appeared and he spoke to her on the other side of the room. She was saying things like, "Oh, she's having a meltdown now." This made me feel horrible, to say the least. Then his sister approached us, saying how unfair it was that we were dragging their mom away. At this point I just left. I couldn't walk home even if I wasn't in pain. I was so embarrassed and angry. My boyfriend says he'll drop me home then come back for everyone else. He goes to tell them and 10 minutes later he comes back and says that they're all coming now. I later found out that his dad had wanted to leave for ages as he was in pain too. It took my boyfriend shouting at his mom to get her to leave. It's been 2 weeks since the wedding and for 3 days I was unable to stand. My boyfriend had to carry me from my bed to the sofa in my daughter's room and even lift my daughter onto my lap to read her books at bedtime, and I was in bad pain for another week after. My boyfriend went to his mom a couple days ago and tried to explain just how bad I was feeling, but she wasn't listening and said that I shouldn't come over for a while, but my boyfriend stood up for me and said it wasn't my fault. Basically, am I an asshole for an undiagnosed disability? Edit: my boyfriend was staying at mine, so I couldn't leave without him as he doesn't have keys to my house because he doesn't stay at mine when my daughter is there. He was only there when she was this time as I couldn't move and no one else was able to help me. I couldn't just stay up to let him in as I needed to be up the next morning to get my daughter, and I had said 10 a.m. was fine as I thought we'd be leaving at 10 p.m. because his mom didn't want to push BFF's dad as he had a bad foot. His mom refused to taxi as she insisted that my boyfriend had agreed to take her home. I also couldn't taxi as my phone had died and I didn't have the money to. My boyfriend wanted to leave at 9:10ish too as he had work the next day. His work clothes were at mine.
The drive there and back is like 40 minutes each way, so he didn't want to leave and to have his mum complaining about having to wait to go home.
It's also a lot of petrol just to please everyone. Also when I say, then his sister approached us, saying how unfair it was that we were dragging their mum away.
That's not the bride, it's another sister. After the wedding my boyfriend spoke to the bride and she was a little annoyed that their mum didn't just find another way home. It was agreed that we'd leave by 9:10-ish in the conversation where they asked to get a ride as they knew both me and boyfriend had things to be up for. This happens 2 days before the wedding, so I didn't know to make alternative plans. I knew my boyfriend needed to go home around 10 p.m. late as he had work.
I also wasn't invited till a couple months before the wedding.
My boyfriend doesn't live with me. He stays when my daughter isn't here. He's staying at a friend's. That is why he doesn't have key.
The only reason he was here with my daughter was because I couldn't do anything and no one else could help me.
My daughter's dad isn't around anymore and my family have ability issues as well.
I also went to the lobby as it was the furthest away from the actual party room. I was crying in pain not because I was sad or wanted to go home.
Has nobody heard of a taxi or Uber? Just seems like everyone here couldn't plan better or figure out a much easier solution.
Esh.
Multiple injured people who might need to leave at different times and only one transport? Y'all set yourselves up for a mess.
Sister must be regretting every inviting you.
Of course his family wants to stay.
They have probably been looking forward and planning the wedding for some time. You should have taken an Uber or taxi home. Your boyfriend could have gone home with his parents and stayed there. I would be totally pissed if I was the mom and my son's girlfriend made it all about her. You are the asshole. You should have arranged alternative transport.
You can't expect the mother of the bride to leave the wedding early and you can't be surprised if she wants to stay given that it's a, hopefully, once-in-a-lifetime event.
You could have gotten a taxi. I'm sorry you were in pain, but you need to take some responsibility. I'd have felt like an asshole acting the way you did. You are the asshole, you defend yourself under every comment. Take a taxi, Uber next time.
If you can't afford one and you share a car, don't go to a big event like this then.
Crying at a wedding. Wow, you must be fun to be around. Totally preventable situation.
And get a doctor for your pain.
Everyone sucks here.
If you have this level of significant injury, pain, disability, then it is on you to make sure you can manage your own situation at an event like a wedding.
You could have driven yourself or skipped the event entirely.
At 6 p.m. when you started really struggling with the pain, you should have figured out an alternate ride home instead of crying in the lobby, which of course is going to attract attention.
We have no way of knowing what your boyfriend even told his parents about this curfew he agreed to. I find it pretty hard to believe the mother of the bride would agree to leave the reception at 10 p.m. And clearly the bride wouldn't have approved either. Your boyfriend didn't do you any favors here by taking you under those conditions. Am I the asshole for telling my mom that she's ruining my wedding? I'm 28F. Dealing with my mom's excessive gift giving of clothes and her intrusive involvement in my wedding planning.
Throughout my life, she sent me numerous packages of clothes, always unsolicited, and mostly not my style. I've tried to politely return the items I don't like, but this hasn't stopped her from sending more.
My fiancé recently pointed out how her style is very different from mine, often either very matronly or childish.
Despite returning 80% of the clothes she sends, she continues to inundate me with more.
The situation escalated with my wedding dress. When we went shopping, she pushed for a matronly dress that I hated, and dismissed the ones I liked. I eventually chose a dress that everyone, including her, seemed to agree was the most flattering. However, the next day she insisted it was too low cut and even showed photos of me in it to her friends at my grandmother's funeral to get validation. She claimed that they all agreed with her and suggested we go shopping again, which I refused.
Despite my clear refusal, she booked another dress shopping appointment, which was a humiliating experience.
She showed zoomed-in photos of my chest to the staff, who graciously assured her that it was not revealing.
However, it didn't stop there.
In the car leaving the second dress shop, she said she was then taking me to shop for rehearsal dinner dresses. I said as politely as possible that I wouldn't be requiring her services for that, to which she matter-of-factly stated that she wanted to be involved in picking it out.
After I flew back home, she began sending rehearsal dinner dress options to my house, none of which suited me and were all returned. Each dress was either not my style or the wrong size. Despite my polite returns and clear communication, she persisted in sending more. Recently, I planned a trip back to my parents' place to pick up my wedding dress, which I couldn't bring back earlier due to luggage constraints. A day before my flight, my mom texted me that she had booked an alteration appointment for my dress, claiming it needed to fit perfectly and be less revealing.
She also mentioned that she had paid $50 for the appointment.
After all our previous conflicts over the dress, I was in disbelief that she had not let it go.
I told her that the prior dress shopping experience had been extremely upsetting for me and that I couldn't handle it again. Her response was dismissive, stating that both dress shopping experiences had been traumatizing for her too.
At this, I lost it and told her that her constantly bulldozing and manipulating me has ruined my wedding.
I know my mom genuinely wants to be involved in my life and my wedding, but her constant interference and insistence on her taste over mine are making what should be a joyful planning process into a nightmare. Am I the asshole here? Not the asshole, you are standing your ground for your wedding. It's about your taste and preference. There are certainly some compromises to be made, but your wedding dress is important to your experience. Her insistence is really what is making her talk. Not the asshole. You are overdue for boundaries. I'm assuming that by returning the clothes she sends, you mean returning them to the store or website. If that's the case, start sending them back to her.
As to your wedding dress, I'd not let her anywhere near the one you bought.
And I'd call all my vendors, starting with the bridal store, and put passwords on all your accounts. Not the asshole. Not the asshole. Please ask if the original dress shop can store your dress until your wedding or you have an old friend that can store it. I wouldn't put it past your mom to have it altered without your permission. In the kindest way possible, you are doing a terrible job of standing up for yourself. Stop going to these appointments immediately. Not the asshole, of course. But why did you even go to the appointment she made?
Just say no and don't show up.
Refuse to accept the packages from the carrier. And FFS, do not involve her in anything anymore.
Don't tell her about dates, deadlines and your choices.
Otherwise she will ruin your wedding.
E.g., she doesn't approve of the flowers and knows who your florist is.
What do you want to bet on her not calling them up to change the order?